Turn now to my friend Melissa Chabran, who is an advanced doctoral student at Jesus School, currently working at the San Francisco Public Schools.
Good evening, everyone. Now you will hear about the panel who I have the honor of introducing. You can read more about them in the purple flyer that has been distributed, but I will go through them briefly. First, Professor Noam Chomsky is a professor at the Linguistics and Philosophy Department at MIT. He has written widely on linguistics, philosophy, international affairs, and U.S. foreign policy. Since its origins, he has been actively involved in the World Social Forum. Next, Carolina Contraras is a 10th grader at Somerville High School. She is co-chair of Atrevete, a Latino youth conference, belongs to a mediation program, TADA, Teens Against Dating Abuse, and many other youth organizations. Mel King currently runs the South End Technology Center at Tent City in Boston and is an emeritus lecturer in Urban Studies Department at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. His involvement in politics make him charismatic and a key leader in the history of this state. And finally, Leonida Zurita Vargas from Bolivia is the president of the 6 Federations of Cocoa Growers and a leader of the National Women's Peasants Movement. Claudia Swansnovad, a Kennedy School student, will translate for her. Before we get started, I'd just like to remind you of the flyers that do have the more extensive bios on them, and also that a first set of cards will be distributed for you to communicate your questions, first for Professor Chomsky while he speaks, and next for the rest of the panel. And Akiko and Joao will collect those cards. And they're right here. So, Professor Chomsky.
I had a strange feeling when I walked in. I realized that I think the last time I talked here was after just coming straight out of a couple of days in jail. So I didn't have time to shave, and I hope that's not a harbinger of the future. You can think about that. Unfortunately, I got to rush right off, so I'll be very brief, and a couple comments, and hope there's time for a few questions, but I got to rush off to the next thing. I was at the World Social Forum. I was there the year before. Unfortunately, I had to pass through about as fast as I'm whipping through today, and for similar reasons. The World Social Forum, as you know, is only one of 2 that go on at the same time. There's the World Social Forum in Porto Alegre and the World Economic Forum of those that are called the movers and shakers and the wizards and so on and so forth, who meet in Davos, Switzerland. And the 2 are kind of related. I mean, the bigger the world, the more excited and enthusiastic the World Social Forum gets, the more gloomy the Davos Forum gets. If you read the reports this year, you'll notice they said it was conducted in an atmosphere of gloom and despair, and the World Social Forum was exactly the opposite, full of vitality and energy and enthusiasm, and the 2 things are related. Despite the fact that they're in some respects at opposite ends of the social, economic, and maybe even moral spectrum, they share a lot. What they share, in fact, was pointed out inadvertently by the New York Times in its first story after the big demonstrations in mid-February. They didn't like it much, but they had a front-page story on it, which started off by saying that there are now 2 superpowers on the planet, the United States and world public opinion. Actually, the United States refers to a very narrow sector of power in the United States, and world public opinion is remarkably broad. It certainly included the World Social Forum, but interestingly, it also included the World Economic Forum, which shared with the World Social Forum the same antagonism to the announced imperial grand vision of the administration and the war in Iraq, which is a special case of it. That's common ground, as Colin Powell discovered when he got there. And there are reasons for it. The World Social Forum is impossible to summarize. As you heard, about 100,000 people, and nobody counts, but it's what it looked like. It's roughly twice the preceding year and probably close to 10 times the year before that, from all over the world, every walk of life, lots of enthusiasm, excitement, even optimism. A lot of the optimism is fueled by things that have been happening in Latin America recently. The most dramatic was the election of Lula in Brazil, which is a really historic event. But there are similar ones in the rest of Latin America, and you'll be hearing about them, so I won't go into it. There's a lot, despite the diversity, there's a good amount of common ground there, and they're more or less in the same moral universe, share similar aspirations and goals. But there's tremendous diversity. And at the World Social Forum, there are particular forums on hundreds of issues of every imaginable kind, and also differing not only in priorities and concerns, but also in time scale. So a lot of them are about very urgent current matters. About a quarter were a part of the World Social Forum, which was called Life After Capitalism. That was organized by Mike Albert from the Z network around here, and had dozens of forums looking at long-term visions of what an alternative society might be like. There are a couple of themes that ran through pretty much. One of them is the war-peace issue, which I just mentioned. There's overwhelming opposition shared by as part of the second superpower to the imperial grand vision and the special case of the Iraq War. Maybe there were some divisions in Davos, but I'm pretty sure there weren't many, if any, at Porto Alegre. A second major theme is the theme of global justice that has to do with modes of partly alternative futures, but also modes of international integration. It's what's called globalization sometimes. There's almost nobody there who objects to globalization. You wouldn't be there if you did object, because you couldn't have gotten there. But there's a strain which has a third world origins, which concludes, maybe rightly, maybe wrongly, it's an issue that's debated, that parts of the third world, maybe a lot of it, might do better if they extricated themselves from the existing framework of international institutions and sought another way based on solidarity with comparable groups in the North and so on. That's a strain. However, whether you accept that or not, and there's division over it, there's an overwhelming agreement that in calling for a form of global international integration that's radically different from the investor rights version that's called globalization and the reigning economic systems, that'll be focusing on quite different priorities, on people, not investors, on human rights, on democracy, on social needs, and so on. And that leads to a completely different picture of how the world ought to be organized, and these were topics under intense debate and discussion, and there's plenty in print about it. I can't review it. Actually, these two issues, war, peace, and global justice, are quite closely related, and nobody knows it better than U.S. military planners and intelligence, because they talk about it. In fact, they're kind enough to publish about it, so we know what they think. The national intelligence community, in its projections for the coming years, it predicts that if what they call globalization continues, as they assume it will lead to economic stagnation in large parts of the world and a widening economic divide, and the economic stagnation will lead to ethnic, political, religious conflict and violence, much of it directed against the United States, which is perceived not unreasonably as driving the system, which means terror, more terror, proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, which is also predicted to be a consequence of the grand imperial vision pretty much across the spectrum, not necessarily on the left, right in the establishment. So that's, and military planners make the same assumptions. So if you read long-term, 10, 20-year military plans, They are based on the prediction that there's going to be a growing divide between what they call the haves and the have-nots, the widening economic divide. The mass of have-nots will have to be controlled somehow. That requires increasing military power, because you're not going to satisfy their needs, so you're going to have to control them by force. That means not only outspending the rest of the world in military force, but moving on to new forms of violence. One of the most crucial ones is militarization of space, which is extremely hazardous and will probably do us all in if it continues. There was last October, there were meetings at there was a session of the United Nations devoted to this, to weapons of mass destruction altogether, and the U.S. Unilaterally blocked an effort to ban militarization of space, that's ratifying old treaties, and also voted against a resolution, and that means kills the resolution to ban chemical weapons. That was last October. Now, that's not known in the United States because it wasn't reported, which is not unusual. But in Porto Alegre, it was a major theme. People there care about whether the world's going to be destroyed by militarization of space and chemical weapons and other weapons of mass destruction. So there is a relation between the two themes, and it's understood, and at least at Porto Alegre it's discussed. Another common understanding and concern is sort of an acceptance, intuitively at least, of an old anarchist slogan that goes back to the 19th century, mid-19th century, that you should build the institutions of the future within the society of the present. For most of the participants in Porto Alegre, as I suppose for most of us, that means urban settings, but not entirely. So just to mention a personal anecdote, which will be picked up, so I won't elaborate. From the airport, I went off to an event that was not part of the World Social Forum, but was alongside of it. There were many things going on alongside of it. This was at an MST farm, a farm of the landless workers movement, a little distance away from Porto Alegre, which was the scene of the international meeting of the Via Campesina, the international peasant movement, which is from all over the place and very lively and exciting. I just got there kind of at the end. There was a last day celebration, so singing and dancing, and I listened to a brief, boring speech from me, but mostly people were having fun. And among the things there were the theme of it, the theme of the Via Campesina International Peasants Conference was the slogan that seeds should be the heritage of all people. They should be protected by the United Nations the same way it protects, architectural splendors and so on, cultural splendors. And in the crowd there were tables with women from various parts of the world exchanging seeds with one another and instructions and so on. That reflects very important facts. For most of the people in the world are peasants, farmers. It's most of the world. They're faced with very serious dangers, in fact, destruction. The idea that seeds are the heritage of the future, the women who are interchanging seeds are interchanging local, organically grown seeds. Peasant agriculture is a very rich system, highly productive, usually much more so than so-called scientific agriculture, very intricately embedded in a complex ecology. It's usually handed down from mother to daughter over hundreds of years. It's a rich, productive tradition, but very fragile, like it's destroyed in one generation forever with all the knowledge and understanding and everything that went along with it. And farmers all over the world are trying to preserve not only their way of life, but the possibility of developing sustainable agriculture, which will satisfy local needs in cooperation with consumers and so on. And this is a huge, it's a matter of life and death for farmers around the world, but it's a matter of decent survival for most of us. And there are many other things like it. The MST collectives are perfect, maybe the leading example in the world of the notion of building institutions of the future within the present society. This is a huge popular movement, biggest, in my opinion, most important one in the world. It's been going for about 20 years, taken lots of land, unused land, given to landless workers and rural and urban workers, and developed cooperatives, schools, interactions with cities, and so on. It's pretty impressive. Well, that's only one example. There are many others. At the forum itself, not the side ones, as I mentioned, there were discussions of every imaginable issue. I couldn't participate in more than a very few, but the general sense was pretty positive and optimistic and energetic and excited. I think it's not unreasonable to see in this the first potential, at least, realization of what's been the dream of the labor movement and the left since its origins back in the 19th century, modern origins, and that is a true international, drawing from really diverse sectors of the population and of the world, and in solidarity and interaction and mutual support. It's the beginnings. Where it'll go, you don't know. There's a lot of optimism about it. It's facing enormous obstacles. There's sure to be tremendous disillusionment. You can sort of even pick out the points where it's going to come, and there'll be others, like every other popular movement in history. But like every other popular movement in history, there'll be successes, and even failures are, in a sense, successes because they typically make it possible to pick the struggle up at a higher level next cycle around. That's been the course of history, and there's no reason to expect it to be different now. Stop. I got about 2 minutes.
We have about 2 minutes for questions if folks want to. We're collecting the cards right now, and then we'll take them from there.
Actually, it'd probably be simpler if people just stood up and said something. No? Okay. Should I read it? Okay.
This question asks, can you speak to the possibility of forums that bring people from opposing viewpoints, political parties, classes, backgrounds, etc., together to discuss with good process the issues of survival, war and peace, haves and have-nots, etc.? In other words, do you believe we can evolve beyond opposition to cooperation, sharing, etc.?
Well, first of all, remember we are part of the second superpower. And there's, if people from the first superpower say, George Bush's cabinet want to join in, it's fine. I don't think anybody should object. And if there are representatives of them around here, and there are, they should join in too. But so I think it's perfectly fine to have, opposing viewpoints. However, we should recognize that one viewpoint, that of the first superpower, is overwhelmingly dominant in the so-called information system, the media, journals, intellectual life, what Samuel Huntington over at Harvard once called the institutions responsible for the indoctrination of the young, namely schools, universities, and so on, that the first superpower is overwhelmingly dominant there. The second superpower has to find its own means of expression and communication. And if people from the first superpower, which is a much smaller but much more powerful group, want to join in, I think we should just welcome that. But I don't think myself we have to look for ways to, they're not going to let us into their forums, and we've got plenty to do ourselves, my feeling.
We have 2 more questions which are related, and it's on the war. Professor Chomsky, what is your best guess as to the economic cost of the proposed war? We have one article today suggesting roughly 0.5 trillion. And what do we do? What is our response if they do launch the war?
Well, on the first question, I don't think anybody has a clue. You may have seen that Paul Wolfowitz of the Pentagon just gave a sharp dressing down to the top general in the Army because he didn't like the numbers he was coming up with. In fact, nobody knows. I mean, if you want a serious analysis of the likely cost, there's quite a good article by a well-known economist, William Nordhaus, which is part of a very unusual publication. It's a publication of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences called War with Iraq. And it's a critique of the Bush administration position. It's a narrower critique than I would like, or I suspect many of you would like. So, for example, it doesn't say anything about the cost to the Iraqis. But it's a narrow critique, but a pretty strong one, and unusual, in that I don't believe that an institution like the American Academy has ever taken a public stand in opposition to government power on any issue of anything like this, even on narrow grounds. But in it, one of the chapters is Nordhaus's estimate of the possible cost of the war, and it's as good as anything else. But it's anybody's guess, just as it's anybody's guess what the effect on Iraqis will be. Nobody knows. Nobody has a clue. It could be what the worst case predictions of the aid agencies are, hundreds of thousands killed and so on, or it could be, something out of Santa Claus. The fact is nobody knows. The CIA doesn't know. Donald Rumsfeld doesn't know. I don't know. The so-called experts don't know. I mean, these are among the reasons why sane and decent people don't resort to violence, whether it's personal affairs or, international affairs, unless they have just overwhelming arguments in their favor. You never need arguments against the resort to violence, no matter what domain it is. And one of the many reasons you haven't the slightest idea what's going to lead to. I mean, Kennedy administration, international terrorism against Cuba practically destroyed the world, we learned a couple of months ago. It came very close to leading to a nuclear war. We wouldn't be around if it had. That was international terrorism aimed at regime change. Now the stakes are much bigger, but, you still don't know. Escaped by a miracle that time, and nobody knows what will happen the next time. What should we do the day after the war? I don't know. That's for you to decide. We all have to make our own decisions. What will be most useful in helping people? You got to figure that out. It's not easy. Never is easy. I got to rush off. Sorry.
Thank you to Professor Chomsky for joining us this evening. Next, we're going to hear from Leonida.
Primeramente, muy buenas tardes y agradecerles por la invitación a esta organización tan importante que me siento, pues, como estaría en mi país, unidos.
First of all, she says good evening to everyone, and she wants to thank you for the invitation of such a great institution, and she's honored to be here with you tonight.
Mi nombre es Leonida Zurita Vargas, soy la secretaria ejecutiva de la Organización de Mujeres Campesinas de Bolivia, Bartolina Sisa. También soy la presidenta de las 6 organizaciones de mujeres del Trópico Cochabamba, donde Evo Morales es presidente de los varones y yo de las mujeres.
She is the Secretary General of the National Federation of Women Peasants in Bolivia. She's also head of the 6 confederations of peasants from the Chapare region in the oriental region of Bolivia. Evo Morales is the head of the male peasants. She is the head for the women peasants.
Para nosotros, para entender si otro mundo es posible, eso es lo que nosotros queremos. Pero tenemos que entender que realmente para los países pobres que estamos en guerra no declarada, como Bolivia, por ejemplo, donde nos sentimos que primero tenemos que entender, además tenemos que hacerlo específicamente al modelo neoliberal, que es el enemigo de todos los países pobres.
She says that they really want to think that another world is possible, especially in poor countries that are living a situation of undeclared war. She says that in order to do this, it's very important to understand how the current world works, and especially how the neoliberal model works, because that's the enemy of all the poor countries.
Para nosotros, el modelo neoliberal donde nos capitalizan o donde nos están privatizando nuestras minas ya han sido privatizadas, el agua que se ha capitalizado, pero también donde el gas y otros nos quieren hacer el libre comercio, que es el ALCA, nos quieren quitarnos.
She says that part of this neoliberal model is the fact that they are privatizing the resources in Bolivia. They've privatized the mines, they've privatized the water, now they're going for the gas. And part of this model also is the fact of they want to promote the free trade of the Americas Agreement.
Pero también para hacerlo eso tenemos que unificar, también tenemos que luchar en conjunto contra el modelo neoliberal, porque si no luchamos, si no defendemos, pues nos van a hacerlo.
She says that in order to fight against the neoliberal model, we have to do it together. If not, we won't be able to make it.
También decir que tenemos que entrar en lo político, donde realmente, pues tomar como nosotros un ejemplo, decimos, de la protesta a la propuesta, pero en el Parlamento no funciona, no hay el avance y por eso volvemos de la propuesta a la protesta.
We know that organizations need to step into the political arena to get something done. We normally say that we're going from the protest to the proposal, but when they don't listen to us in Congress, we are forced to go back from the proposal to the protest.
Por eso nosotros en Bolivia ya estamos unificados con la sociedad civil, con los movimientos campesinos, fabriles, maestros, estudiantes universitarios, también rentistas o los jubilados, trabajadoras del hogar, los regantes, o sea, los que estaban en la defensa del agua junto con nosotros y otros.
In Bolivia, we're already united. The civil society, together with the peasants, with the students, with the teachers, together with the retired men and women, and together with the home workers and with all of those who fought with us in the war for the water.
Donde hemos podido llegar a nuestras demandas unificando, donde la lucha hoy en día es por la tierra y territorio, que es la madre de todos los pobres, que nos da vida a su pueblo, donde también por la hoja sagrada que es la coca, porque la coca para nosotros es, algunos dirán que algunos piensan, por ejemplo en Estados Unidos, la coca directamente la cocaína, la droga, pero para nosotros es parte de nuestra cultura, es nuestra medicina natural, es como decir, uva es uva y también se hace vino, pero coca es coca para nosotros, también se hace cocaína con un proceso que los químicos no lo tenemos en Bolivia, nos envían desde los Estados Unidos.
She says our struggle is taking place in two different levels. We're fighting for our land, the mother of the poor, the mother of life. But we're also fighting for our coca leaf. Some in the U.S. think that coca leaf equals cocaine, and that's not true. The coca leaf for us is part of our culture, part of our traditions. The coca leaf is used for us to practice our natural medicine. Most of all, you cannot identify the grapes with the wine. For us, it's the same thing. The coca is made with lots of chemicals in order to get the cocaine. These chemicals are coming from the U.S.
Donde también nosotros lo pisteamos, lo masticamos, como aquí lo hacen el café, nosotros lo hacemos la coca, ¿no? También está nuestra lucha por la protección de los recursos naturales que nos quedan, también por el gas, y nuestro petróleo, y también nuestra lucha hoy en día es contra el ALCA.
Our coca leaf is used for many things. We used to chew on it. Like you guys have coffee, we have coca. And we are also fighting for the defense of all our natural resources, for the gas, for the oil, and against the free trade of the American Agreement.
Para nosotros, para enfrentar el modelo, es lo primero, son las bases lo que deciden qué vamos a hacer. Y nosotros somos como dirigentes, es donde realmente, pues, lo que dicen las bases, nosotros somos las portavoces, que en este momento también me siento un portavoz, tanto en Porto Alegre, que he conocido al doctor Chomsky, cuando tenía que exponer Evo Morales con Chomsky, yo tenía que leer la carta de Evo Morales porque estaba en un conflicto en Bolivia, no pudo estar en Porto Alegre, pues para nosotros es muy importante hacer las relaciones y también como ahora me encuentro aquí con Chomsky.
We know what's important is the basis to decide. What's important for us is that we are the leaders. We are giving them the voices. Right now I'm a leader here today. I was a leader and a voice for them also in Porto Alegre. I was there with Chomsky. And there I read a letter sent by Evo Morales, who couldn't go to the meeting because he was fighting in Bolivia.
También aquí he podido unificarme, también agradecerle a la Universidad Harvard, donde he podido participar en una conferencia de construyendo puentes, o sea, hacer las alianzas más, donde he podido estar en diferentes universidades, dando la voz de las mujeres de Bolivia, dando la voz de los quienes somos víctimas como mujeres, también hombres, pues donde estamos haciendo, hemos podido visitar las organizaciones de derechos humanos, hemos podido visitar algunos congresistas de los Estados Unidos, quienes también nos pueden ayudar.
I've been invited here to Harvard University to talk at the bridge building conferences that took place in the Kennedy School. And I had the chance to make alliances with different people. I've become the voice of the women in Bolivia, but not only that, I'm also the voice for all the victims, men and women. I've had the chance to go and meet with human rights organizations, with congressmen in the U.S., and we're making alliances.
Pero sí, tenemos que entender que el mundo o el modelo neoliberal es el enemigo, y para derrotar al enemigo tenemos que hacer alianzas, respetar al pueblo de los pobres, donde también tenemos que trabajar junto a los pobres, donde también nosotros como dirigentes tenemos que luchar lo que dicen las bases por una justicia para ser liberados contra este enemigo.
She says we understand that the neoliberal model is the enemy. That's what we have to fight against, making alliances. We need to defeat it. We need to do it for the poor. That's what we're fighting for.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Gracias, Leonida. Now we're going to hear from Carolina, a student at Somerville High School.
Hello, everybody. I first want to start off by giving thanks to Teresa for inviting me. I'm going to start off with my vision of a better world, and I do think it's possible. My vision is a world with peace, a world where children wouldn't die every day of hunger, a world with tolerance of all races and all religions, a world where education would be one of the #1 priorities, a world where there would be justice and equality. Personally, I'm doing a lot to get there. I'm doing mediation, and that's just a way to work out fights and disagreements. I do that at Somerville High School. I think that what's going on right now with the war, A lot of students don't know a lot about it, but I'm very interested in what's going on. And my idea is Bush and the Bush organization is giving such a bad example to the youth, because if you're going to war, you're just telling the youth at Somerville High School, just go fight if you have a disagreement with someone. And I think that's horrible. I feel very unsafe sometimes because of everything that's going on, not only in Somerville, but everywhere. All the rapes, everything, and that's why I'm in a group called Teens Against Dating Abuse. I think it's very important also to educate not only the youth at like different high schools, but the youth at elementary schools. I go to elementary schools and I teach students about mediation because I think that's where we should start. We should start at the elementary school, continue at the high school, through college. I feel that youth, they're not giving enough attention to us. I feel that we are the future presidents, the future doctors, the future teachers, and we're not being paid attention enough. I think everybody just should pay more attention to us and acknowledge that we're there. I am an activist now, but I want to be a bigger one when I grow up. And with all the budget cuts going on, they're going to cut so many teachers. They're estimating that there's going to be 37 students in one classroom, and I can't learn like that. So there has to be something done about that. There's just so much. I don't even know. Okay. And, okay. Another thing I'm doing is I'm working with Atrevete, and that's something that's very big for me. That's kind of like one of the places where I started. Atrevete, it's a great organization. It's working towards Latino youth, but also youth in general. We're working for like so many issues that Latinos are facing today. Like, for example, the MCAS. MCAS is a big deal, and like 80% of the Latino failed the science and math tests the year 1998. In 1999, it was worse and everything. And I'm personally like in honors classes and all that, and I'm not threatened by that. But people that I love, people that I look up to are, just because they don't have enough knowledge to pass these tests. And I think that there's something that should be done about that. Okay. I'm stuck. Okay. Please understand that I'm a high school student and I'm really nervous. Okay. I kind of struggling a little bit with a couple of organizations that we're in, like TEDA and Atrevete. We need more support. We need money. Everybody needs money, but we need money to do some of the things that, that we want to do. Like, we want to have a good conference. We want to offer the youth, because the youth deserve the best, we want to offer them a great conference. So we need support, and I don't think we're getting support. I just feel like you guys should all just help us, please. And you guys should just help us, the youth at high schools, elementary school, help us accomplish our goals, because I feel it would be so much easier on us, and help us to be tutors. Be all that you can be volunteers at be mentors and all that. That's my advice to you guys. I want to just lastly say this. I used to believe that one person can never make a change, never make a difference in this world. And through my short years, I realized that that is completely false. But I've also learned that by working together, by building coalitions, by building bridges, we can make a bigger impact and a greater change in this world. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina. I think that we all have a lot to learn from you as well as your colleagues. Next, we have Professor Mel King from the South End Technology Center at Tent City in Boston.
The choice was to speak after Chomsky or Carolina. Actually, I'm glad I made the right choice. Because it's clear to me that we're going to be in good hands. Um, 10 o'clock this morning, I was at the Phyllis Wheatley School, Middle School in Roxbury for Black Stories Month. Now, I don't say Black History because I said it once and a group of women said, we want to hear her story. And I know that Carter Woodson, when he thought of Black Stories Month, he was talking about people hearing our story. But one of the things that I talked about this morning was the message in the music. And I know that over time, in terms of people of African heritage, that the music has been a way to get the message across from the Underground Railroad and the spirituals, Steal Away, to the Lift Every Voice and Sing, and then the songs of the civil rights movement. And I said to them, I know you have your music, but I think it would be important for me to share the music that I heard because there was a message in it. And, you know, there's Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder. But one of my favorites is Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. And I'd like to just take a few moments to read. If I'd have had it together, I'd have brought the tape. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking. Time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so much, so very much from what it used to be. There's so much hatred, war, and poverty. Wake up all the teachers. Of course, the students liked it when I said that. Time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say. Because they're the ones who's coming up and the world is in their hands. So when you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. The world won't get better if we just let it be. The world won't get no better. We got to change it, just for you and me. Wake up all the doctors, make the old people well. They're the ones who suffer and who catch all the hell. But they don't have so very long before the judgment day, so won't you make them happy before they pass away? Wake up all the builders, time to build a new land. I know we can do it if we all lend a hand. The only thing we have to do is put it in our mind, and surely things will work out. They do every time. The world won't get no better if we just let it be. The world won't get no better. We got to change it, just for you and me. And I was impressed with the spontaneous applause that came when I ended, "We got to change it just for you and me." So if middle school students understand the importance of the need for change and its impact on them, I think we have, in my mind, a chance for the world that we would all like to see. Now, I have a few thoughts about some things that would make a difference, and I think I'm in the appropriate place to share them, Harvard. Because one of the concerns that I have is this notion of intellectual property, which turns out to be, for me, a way of saying the perpetuation of greed, or a way of denying access to resources, information, material, medicine that would make a difference in people's lives. So the kind of world that I envision is one in which when someone takes advantage of the information that is in the world and comes up with something that can benefit people who have some health issue, that it be made available for everybody, and the question of intellectual property be squashed. We don't need to have people dying of AIDS when there are resources that have been developed by the people's knowledge. Albert Einstein, I think, said it well. He said, "Everything I know I owe to those who were before me." So we all have to adopt that kind of approach. That everything we know, we got from someone before me. And we owe, as he would say, a responsibility in taking that to put it back for others to have and to share. Now, one of the other issues that I believe we have to understand, and that is how we define terms. And so if we're talking about a new world and a vision, and when I think of vision, I think of Toni Morrison's Beloved, where her main character says that the grace you can have is the grace you can imagine. If you can't see it, you won't have it. So as we are here, we have to think about what is the vision? Because that's what we begin to strive for. So I have just a few thoughts about the vision and some definitions about that vision. And the first is that we need a new definition of power. A definition that says power is supporting others to get where you are and beyond, and feeling good about it. Now, it's kind of interesting that in most families, try to make sure that the children get beyond in terms of access, education. And yet, and we feel good about it. You know, we go to the graduation, you feel very, very good about it. And it would seem to me that that's a way of thinking about how we would use the resources, the power that we have personally to move so that others get where we are and beyond, and that we feel good about it. Now, get where we are and beyond doesn't mean that we think that it's great for people to get where we are in terms of the consumption of natural resources and say, well, we want everybody to get into using up the world's resources like we do, and we'll feel good about it if they get beyond that. No, we don't mean it in that sense. Another definition for me is technology. Now, at MIT for close to 30 years, and I always say to them that they don't know the difference between high tech and no tech. Now, for me, it comes out of the words in the Bible when it says, they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Now, that means to me that anything that takes life is no tech. That anything that enhances the quality of life is high tech. I mean, that's the message. It's very clear to me. And so when we realize that as we look at what is going on, that the current administration is increasing the money for weapons of destruction. It is reducing, as Carolina says, the resources for human development. And so, in our world, with our definition, we know what technology is supposed to be. And then, so there's the technology of what comes out of the earth and the atmosphere, and then there's the technology that comes out of human relations. And so we need a new technology of human relations. We need a new paradigm about what human relations ought to be in our new world. Another definition has to do with development. Now, it's interesting that yesterday they unveiled the replacement for the World Towers. And it's been interesting that we continue to use phallic symbols as a way of saying it's development. Nyerere would say that the roads, the buildings, are not development. They are tools. Because development can only be of people. And that we cannot develop other people, Mr. President. Wrong term. Is appointed. We can't develop other people. People have to develop themselves. We can provide some of the tools, but we know that our technology and our tools, which gets me to the last definition, democracy, that we do not live in a democracy. By my definition, democracy is where all the people are valued and we value all people. In these United States, from its inception, we have never valued all people. The Constitution lays it out, 3/5 for people like me, no count for women and for people who don't own the land. And if you think it has changed significantly, I don't know what you're smoking or reading, but it hasn't. That doesn't mean that we have not exercised what I think is part of the significant document, the Declaration of Independence, and that is the right of revolution, the right to alter and to change. We are not going to have the kind of world that we want as long as we do not believe that we have the right to alter or to change, that if we do not have a revolutionary spirit, if we do not take the votes that we give to be a revolutionary act at each time, because if they are about the status quo, that's what we get, the status quo, and that is why we are in a situation with respect to the world as we see it. I just want to close with one piece, which I think is related to this. I had the privilege of introducing Nelson Mandela to people when he came here and spoke at the Esplanade. In introducing him, I said that while his body was in jail, his mind was free. And there are a lot of us whose bodies are free, but our minds are in jail. The existence of the class warfare that is going on, not only in this country, but around the world. And let's not be deluded by the role that people in different countries are playing with respect to what is going on in Iraq. And yes, we want to commend any efforts that will stop the war. But that class warfare was going on before 9/11. It included Saddam. If our minds are free and we're understanding, because that's what's going to make this new world, how much we are participating by not thinking, acting revolutionary that allows the gap between people whose incomes are low and those who have, who the 2% who own most of the wealth in this country and in other parts, that as long as our minds are not taking in and organizing and dealing with that, then the chances that we get the new world that we want, I think, are very, very slim. And so if we want to make the change, then, like the song says, peace begins with me. Changing our minds begins with each of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. King. Now we're going to have a series of questions and answers. If we're going to take a couple minutes, so those of you who are situating yourselves can do so. But we're going to alternate between oral and written questions. So some of you have prepared questions on the index cards. If you would like to ask your questions orally, please come to the microphones that are in each of the aisles.
Cuando se va Chomsky se va todo el mundo.
Oh, okay. I saw her the second. She does a wonderful job. She is. Thank you.
I wish I could sound more like you, though. I wish I could sound more like you.
No. That was just
So I can have everybody's attention. We have some good time left for some questions and good dialogue, which is really where some change begins, is in the dialogue back and forth between all of us. So if some of you would stay so we can have that question and answer session, that would be wonderful. And I think we'll handle them mostly through the microphones. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and get started. The first question that we have is, it's not designated for any particular person on the panel, so I'm going to address it to all of the panel because there may be different perceptions on this. But the question is, what is neoliberalism? So maybe if each of the panel members could take that.
Primero, para nosotros el neoliberalismo es donde nos están capitalizando, nuestras empresas privadas, nos están privatizando, nos están quitando. Y dentro del modelo está el ALCA, por ejemplo, que hablaba Chomsky sobre los transgénicos. O sea que nos quieren quitar nuestra cultura, nos quieren quitar nuestra identidad, nos quieren quitar inclusive las semillas naturales que lo tenemos hasta este momento. Como pese con el modelo que nosotros decimos neoliberal, es donde nos está trayendo guerra, por ejemplo, guerra contra las drogas, pero sin embargo no están haciendo guerra contra los que tienen las drogas, sino que contra el campesino que está sobreviviendo. Entonces pensamos, ahora nuestro gobierno cambia el mensaje, ya no es guerra contra las drogas, sino que es guerra contra el terrorismo para conseguir más dinero para que nos puedan matarnos a bala, porque nosotros vivimos en una guerra no declarada.
For us, neoliberalism is the privatization, it's the imposition of a free trade agreement with which they're taking away our culture, our identity, our natural seeds. Neoliberalism for us has brought war, the undeclared war that's taking place in Bolivia through the war of drugs. But if it was a real war on drugs, they should be attacking the traffickers, not us, the peasants. And now they changed the name of the war. Now it's a war against terrorism, and still the bullets are getting to us.
Thank you. Do we have another question in the audience for any of our panel members? Why don't you come up to the microphone? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm not sure quite how to ask this, but when I listen to debates between Republicans and Democrats, for example, especially people starting to campaign now, I noticed, and this is addressed to just looking for ideas, that there are some words that the Republicans use to criticize the Democrats that we perhaps love in this audience, you know, like class warfare and liberalism. And so I was wondering if, for example, in terms of problem solving, if you really wanted to make a good impression and to get across the idea that there are social classes and that maybe class warfare would be good, or maybe there could be an elimination of classes, or maybe something's wrong there, how could, say, perhaps some of the Democratic candidates do a better job instead of having to back off and say, oh, no, I wasn't doing that? You know what I mean? Or, oh, no, I'm not a liberal. You know, see what you're familiar with what I'm talking about, are you not? So they back off, or they say, oh, no, I'm not bickering, you know, for example, that Republicans and Democrats should have debate. And instead they say, oh, no, we're not bickering. Oh, no, this isn't class warfare. Oh, no, we're not liberals. You know, and I just wanted to talk about that in a better, you know, healthier way.
I think it would be easier if they stood for something. You know, I think it says it because you used to know in whose interest they worked. I think most of the senators are millionaires. They all take incredible sums of money from corporations. So I believe very clearly that they know who their class interests are. They're not mine. And their policies, Reagan on up, have clearly been to take and put resources into the people in their class. And the evidence is clear. And so when I mention the fact that the resources are going in a way that you take housing. There's a serious housing problem in this country. And you go back to a commitment in the 40s to make sure that everyone had decent, affordable housing. And for 35 years, they were attempting to move in that direction. But in the last years, they've moved from 300,000 units down to 60,000 nationally. Those kind of dramatic changes in providing access. I'm clear in whose interests the Democrats and the Republican work.
It works? Okay. I'd like to first direct my question to Leonida, and then I guess I thought globally, and then Mel, and I'd actually like to ask it in Spanish, and then I'll translate, if it's okay. Me impresionó mucho que usted habló de la unidad, que nos dijo, ¿verdad?, que estamos unidos. Y pues muchas gracias por decirlo, pero también Chomsky pues implicó por lo menos que también nosotros de los Estados Unidos somos parte del problema, porque somos parte de un país pues con mucho poder, y entonces también quiero reconocer que estamos en un lugar de mucho privilegio, nosotros que estamos estudiando en Harvard, ¿verdad? También es un lugar de mucho poder aquí en los Estados Unidos. Y pues entonces mi pregunta es de la perspectiva de usted, que también que nos dijo que usted es portavoz de su pueblo, ¿verdad? Y de una causa también pues muy importante. ¿Qué nos diría que nosotros podemos hacer desde este puesto, este lugar, esta posición, de tener mucho poder, de ser de los Estados Unidos y también de ser estudiantes de Harvard? Y quizás como enfocando en, pues, como estamos estudiando, ¿qué nos podemos estudiar? O así a qué método, o pues no sé, pero si nos puedes, nos puede guiar algo, si queremos colaborar unidos hacia un futuro un poco más justo, un poco más, pues con más alegría para todos, ¿verdad? Nada más lo voy a decir en inglés también. Actually, I'm not sure if I can remember all that in English, but essentially what I'm saying is that Leonida, I was really struck and impressed that she said she felt like almost like if she was in her country and that we're all united. And I was telling her I was grateful for that, to say that, but I said that Chomsky implied and more directly said in what he was saying is that from the United States we're also part of the problem because we're part of the superpower. And so I sort of focused in and said, but also as students at Harvard we're in an extremely privileged position, and we represent a place of great power. So my question is, globally as well as locally, what might be any thoughts you have or guidance that to sort of direct us in our studies or in our future goals, thinking about as students, how can we be intentional when we're studying right now to create a world that has greater happiness for all and greater justice for all?
Bueno, para mí también no decirle que en Estados Unidos yo pensaba antes que estaban encima la plata y por eso mandan para la guerra, solamente después te digo, para la guerra que no, o sea que con la guerra supuestamente que dicen lucha contra, o la guerra contra las drogas, yo no sé cómo ustedes entienden, yo quisiera saber eso más bien, porque realmente para nosotros no luchan contra los que tienen las drogas, sino contra nosotros que solamente tenemos las plantas de coca, que es para nosotros es nuestra cultura, nosotros la queremos, la amamos, y inclusive, ¿por qué dirán ustedes, por qué defienden la coca? Pero si realmente para nosotros es el único económico sustento de la familia. Hay una ley, aunque la ley se hizo en Estados Unidos, la ley 1008, va a ser muy difícil para traducirlo, pero donde a nosotros nos dice erradiquen la coca y a cambio de un producto alternativa, lo hemos hecho. Erradicamos la coca, nos da una pequeña compensación para que nos decía siempre el desarrollo alternativo, que es ahora su mensaje es 5 estrellas productivas, el palmito, el banano, plátano, o después las piñas, maracuyá. Pero para nosotros, con la plata que hemos erradicado la coca, teníamos que comprar las semillas de toda esa cantidad de productos, inclusive no solamente las semillas.
Okay, I'm going to try to summarize. So, she says that she first thought that the U.S. was actually just sitting on top of all this money, and she really does not understand how do people conceive here in the U.S. what the war against drugs really is. She asks you to please explain to her what do you understand by that. She doesn't understand why the war is taking place against them, the peasants. She says that they're only trying to survive, and they're using their coca leaf as a part of their culture and their tradition, and also as a means to live. They use it for several things. They use it for barter trade. They use it for many things. She started talking about the law 1008. That's the law that was drafted in the U.S. and that actually deals with the eradication process that's taking place in Bolivia right now. According to this law, the indigenous populations were able to receive a stipend in order to buy new seeds and carry on alternative development crops programs. They were giving this money and they were able to buy seeds for pineapple, for palm hearts, and maracuya in order to get new crops going on. But it didn't work.
No solamente eso, sino que también nos dijo, críen patos, gallinas, vacas, que con esa plata tenían que comprar. Cada vaca costaba $500. Y esas las vacas que nos traían eran, como decirles, chucaros, nosotros decimos, no era con la gente que vivía, sino que descargaban de los carros y las vacas tenían que correr al monte, escaparse, y nosotros teníamos que buscarlos 2 días, un día, porque no podíamos agasarles con la pita, sino que teníamos que buscar un compañero que tenga una arma para matarlo y carnearlo, comerlo, porque $500 para nosotros es mucha plata. Y por eso, como el desarrollo alternativo fracasó, mismo gobierno reconoce, y nosotros pensamos, tanta plata tiene Estados Unidos para que nos envíen a los pobres, pero no nos llega a nosotros todo el dinero. Lo que llega a nosotros son en las balas, en las ametralladoras, los muertos que tenemos, los heridos, niños huérfanos. Una niña murió porque estaba defendiendo junto a su madre su coca. Cuando una mujer dice, por favor, no lo erradique mi coca, ya no tengo con qué sobrevivir, pero los policías pues tienen que disparar, matarlos. Entonces, para nosotros es, que yo voy a su pregunta, que hagan campaña, que desatanicen la coca, porque la coca es como cualquier planta, porque los químicos en Bolivia no lo tenemos, sino que vienen desde aquí, los empresarios grandes que elaboran su producto y quieren vender. Y si no venden, van perdiendo. Como por ejemplo, el compañero que decía, donde hacen las armas, es una empresa muy grande y tiene que vender su producto. Y si no vende, va a perder su capital. Entonces, para nosotros es lo mismo. Como fracasó la alternativa, pues nosotros hemos tenido que volver a plantar. Porque para la sobrevivencia en la familia, y por eso hemos dicho, quienes escuchan, para nosotros, que hagan campañas que nos ayuden a la solidaridad, porque nuestra lucha de nosotros no es... Nosotros también estamos muy de acuerdo contra las drogas, pero también quienes están con las drogas son el mismo gobierno. Un ejemplo nomás voy a poner. Por ejemplo, del ex dictador Banzer. Su sobrino es capitán de un ejército, de un cuartel, pero en ese cuartel encontraron 8 toneladas de cocaína. Pero matan a la gente, a nosotros, que nosotros somos, tener $100 es delito, tener una bicicleta montañera es delito, y nos dicen que son los narcotraficantes, para justificar.
Okay, let me try to get it from there. So she first was talking about how the alternative development crops have not worked in Bolivia. She started talking about how they were given $500 in order to buy animals. They were supposed to buy ducks, hens, cows, but they couldn't. But the cows escaped. When they got them down from the trucks, they ran away, so they had to shoot them down. And then she also talked about the fact that aid does not reach the poor. The aid, all the money that's being sent for the alternative crops programs are not reaching the poor. It's going to machine guns and bullets, and it's translating into casualties. There was even a girl that died with her mom in the struggle. She says that what she wants the people to do here for her is campaign in favor of the coca leaf. We have to desatanize the coca leaf. She says that in Bolivia they do not have the chemicals. They are not producing cocaine. Themselves, the peasants are against drugs. But in Bolivia, it's the government that's corrupt. There has been examples of this. For example, the ex-president's nephew, who was actually a captain in the army, was found in possession of 8 tons of cocaine.
Entonces, nosotros, yo como mujer, yo vivo en la carne propia, junto con las profesoras, maestras, son víctimas como nosotros. Por eso pensamos que ustedes a sus congresistas mandaran carta que no haya plata para el desarrollo alternativo, porque no nos llega a nosotros, sino que a los buenos sueldos de los funcionarios de gobierno. Mandar, decir, ahora claro, hay veces nuestro gobierno viene a decir que Bolivia tranquilidad, paz, sin problema, pero sin embargo ahora su mensaje, cuando tenemos después de 5 diálogos con el gobierno nosotros nos propusimos, paren en la erradicación de coca, pausa en la erradicación de coca, nosotros vamos a parar para no plantar coca. Mientras que haya la militarización, va a haber violencia, violación de los derechos humanos, día tras día, pero nosotros queremos que no haya. Él dice, yo también estoy muy de acuerdo, que haya coca en el Chapare, sin violencia, que haya paz. Pero sí, entre tú y yo, que nos sentimos, nuestro gobierno es presidente de los ricos y nuestro presidente, que es Evo Morales, nuestro presidente de los pobres. Y vamos a concluir. Y para eso hemos dicho, nos dice, muy bien, tú y yo firmaremos, pero tenemos que preguntar a nuestro jefe o al papá que nos envía plata, porque son los Estados Unidos. Yo tengo que viajar a consultar y para que no nos corten la economía. Pero nosotros algunas veces decimos, muy bien, que no llegue la plata, porque no nos llega a nosotros. Que paren, que nos corten la economía. Y por eso nosotros hemos dicho, llega, más bien el gobierno cambia su mensaje, como decía hace un momento. Ya no es guerra contra las drogas, ya es guerra contra el terrorismo y consigue más plata para ellos.
She's asking you to please talk to your congressmen. Ask them to not send any more aid for alternative development. It's not doing its mission. She says that they've been in talks with the government. They are actually in favor of a dialogue. The government sat down to talk to them, and they said, okay, we're also in favor of a peaceful Bolivia, of a peaceful Chapare region, but first we need to go to talk to our boss. So the president came to the US to talk to Bush. And when he went back, he never sat down to talk again with the peasants. He came back with more money and just changed the name of the war. Now it's a war against terrorism.
I'd like to read a question that we got from the audience, and this one is actually for you, Carolina. The question is Atrevete only for Somerville High School students? Were you one of the founders of it, and what are some of your activities?
Atrevete is actually an organization of a coalition of kids from all over Massachusetts, well, the Boston area. I was actually one of the founders, and Dayanna Fernandez is also from Somerville. There's people from Roxbury, from Hyde Park, Dorchester, Panama. I mean, there's Jamaica Plain. Just all over Massachusetts. And it's awesome to work with kids from like different high schools because I get their perspective on things that are going on their community. Some of our activities are, like, we have our meetings. And our meetings, we talk about, like, how we're going to organize this conference, because everything's done by us, by youth, with, of course, mentors. One of my highlights, one of my really big activities that I did this year was the bilingual education, the campaign against the bilingual education. It was like a rally in Davis Square, and I was educating people that didn't know anything about bilingual education. So we do those kinds of activities, and we actually come to Harvard sometimes, and we do presentations for college students on what Atrevete is, and our mission, our goals, and everything. So that's
in the audience.
Hi, everybody. can I just take this moment to honor everybody in the audience and ask you to just look at each other, just turn around and look from the front, just look at who's here. Because when we talk about democracy, our very institutions about how we set ourselves up actually sometimes get in the way of that democracy. And I would like to propose to everybody in this room that you are all leaders, that we are all capable with our leadership. These people who are sitting up here in front of us have stepped forth in their leadership, and that's why they were invited to come here, because they've already proved their leadership. But what I would like to suggest to all of us is that we can potentially evolve, each and every one of us, past the thinking that is that we are all in opposition. And I would like to invite us to imagine, what would it take for us, the same question, the same proposition that I asked Mr. Chomsky through my question. What's it going to take for us to move beyond the protest in the street, to get into forums, conferences, circles, dialogue with people from Raytheon, with people from Boeing, with people from ABC, NBC, and all of the people who we consider thems and the haves? What would happen if every single person in this room was able to imagine that there was something they could do to go make a connection with the thems? Can we get past us and them? Can we include our whole body, not just our mental? This conference today was a wonderful conference. It was primarily a mental conference. Mel mentioned the power of music. The South African Revolution would not have happened unless the people were out in the streets moving their bodies, unless there was heart to heart. And I guess I want to ask again, can we imagine, say a year from now, having a forum where Republicans and Democrats and Greens and Rainbows and our young leadership and our Latino leadership and those who are making the connection between the military expenditure and the budget cuts, can we imagine, this group imagine us pulling off a gathering where we could bring people from opposing sides together, not in the streets, not with the billy clubs, not with the pepper spray, not with the rubber bullets, but I just invite you to join me to go to the place of evolution that's beyond us and them. I don't know whether you want to respond, how you want to respond, but I just think it's time to get past us and them. Thank you.
Excellent question and excellent challenge to lots of us in the audience. We have one more question from the audience that came up from a card. This is for both Mel and Carolina. The question is, how do we teach our children to become the revolutionary leaders of tomorrow and to persist in their activism despite the frustration of our unbalanced political system?
By being that ourselves.
Well, personally, from my own experience, I get taught in school by key people like Alice Colmack, like Susan Cameron, different things. And I go to elementary schools and I teach them. Today, for example, I was at an elementary school in Somerville and I was teaching them mediation. I was teaching them that there is another way to solve disagreements and conflicts other than fighting. And one of my friends told me that was a warm-up to come up here in front of you guys. And it definitely is. I can picture me having my children in the future and teaching them everything that I've learned, through all the way from solving problems to having tada, and being able to counsel other people, being able to help other people. And that's the way that you guys should do it, by going and teaching us
the teenagers, and the elementary schools, because we are the future doctors, we are the future presidents, we are the future activists and teachers. And if you guys want to have your future guaranteed, then you better start with us.
Okay, we have time for 2 more final questions, and then I'm going to have to be the bad guy and call it quits, but go ahead.
Okay. My question is, I'm a big believer in the power of empathy. And
Hello?
Okay, I'm a big believer in the power of empathy, and I don't see a lot of empathy from either superpower, to be honest. And I'm curious, how we go about making the world more empathic. I mean, it's easy to think like the actions of, say, Saddam Hussein or President Bush are incredulous, looking from a third-person perspective. But when you actually step into their shoes and feel what it really feels like to be them, then suddenly it makes a lot of sense. And I'm just, I have a lot of respect for the Asian cultures where there's a lot of, face saving, for example, plays a large role in their interactions. And it seems like, for an example, how we deal with Saddam Hussein, we're not leaving him any face-saving options or other things that might be an answer to avert war. And I just would like to know, how do we begin to make the world more empathic?
I'm not sure where I keep thinking and wondering why, when we have these groups in Europe, in the Middle East, Africa, there isn't some insistence that they get Saddam and Bush in the room. In some of our work with groups where there's issues of their differences that get played out in the media, getting them in the room and even discussing their families and their hopes for their children makes a difference in how they see each other as parents, for example. So I think getting them in the room and encouraging that to happen, I know people would say, well, that's really way out, etc. But it is because it's way out that it can be a way in to begin to think of how we do that. I just wanted to back up because in some ways I agree that the language we use is a factor in that as well. And what I thought about was the need for a different kind of media presentations that as I think, I was just listening today about filmmakers and how they were talking about how Jacques Cousteau played a role in getting a lot of us to think differently about the ocean, etc., because we saw a lot of his films about it. We need, a media presentations which humanize all of us and not demonize us. And so if we can think, because I was thinking when the question asked about what happens here at the School of Ed, the fact of the matter is the TV and the media is, beating us, 10-1 in terms of educating or at least informating our children. And I think informating may be better than educating our children. And so part of the work that I've been trying to do at the Technology Center was to get enough bandwidth so that we could do some webcasting, some broadcasting, and to get our young people to put different images, different stories on the web that they can present and control. So because I see that the images that come across every day, every hour, do not portray a question of empathy and positive identification of all the folks on the planet, then if we want to see something different by way of an education process, then maybe we need to learn more about media and what can happen with it.
I have two questions, in fact, for two different persons. First, for Carolina. I would like to know, it's just an information that I would like to know, what's the reactions, what's the atmosphere in your high school regarding all the events that are happening now, and also more in general, because we are speaking here about the World Social Forum, about like all the inequalities that this country has, or the non-access to education for everybody, or for social benefits. I mean, how do the people in your high school react? Is there, I don't know, is there any movement? Do you speak about that? Do you have debate in class or not? Because I really have the impression that the major role that has to be played is in school, because if you don't begin at school to educate the children, the kids, towards, I mean, I don't know, on really politics, on what's going on around the world, you are never going to change anything, and you are not going to make people vote, you are not going to make people feel responsible if you only teach them about math, about literature. You need also to teach them about international relations and, I don't know, international development, so that they can be more aware of what's going on. And so I would like to know, what's going on in your high school, in general with the...
Well, in my high school, there's not like a big reaction to a lot of the things that's been like occurring, but because they don't talk about it. A lot of the teens don't talk about it. But when they come up to me and we talk about it personally, they do have a reaction to it. They don't like what's going on, and that's why history is like one of my favorite classes, because we do debate in history about different things that are like occurring right now, and during history class they talk about everything that's going on with Iraq and with the terrorists and everything. And I think you're right. I think they should talk about these things instead of like all the time math and science and chemistry, which is not my favorite subject. But they don't, and I think they should. I think my school would have, and every high school would have a bigger reaction if we were informed, like in school, because not many of us watch the news, and if we do, we're not getting the correct information because the media changes everything around. So, I mean, we don't have like a big reaction in school, like about everything that's going on, really. But there are a couple of students, like myself, and we do take action. We do form clubs, and we do come to these forums. Like, I've been to many forums in Harvard to educate myself and to learn more about what's going on and what can I do to make this world a better place.
Can I respond, because I keep coming back to you. What are you doing with your friends, your neighbors, people? This is all of our work. And today at that middle school, the teacher who asked me to come brought the film about Rosewood, place in Florida where race riot. Well, it wasn't even a riot as much as white people rioting and burning up black homes. And also about the Tulsa riots, to get the young people to begin to understand about those kind of issues and problems. So to that extent, you bring up a good point. But how many other teachers do that? Right? So that's one piece. The other is, I'm going to repeat what I said. How much are you doing with your neighbors about that? You bring them in, you sit and talk. Do we have that kind of a discussion about that? Do we do the research about the amount of money that's going into weapons of destruction and whatnot, and have those kind of dialogues with adults. Adults are the ones who do the voting. Adults are the ones who set the policies by the people that they elect to office. And so I'm not for this leapfrog approach in this. I believe that we are responsible and we need to take the kind of action, because as we model this discussion about what kinds of things we need to be looking at and changing, then we push the media to be more accurate and appropriate in their presentations. So I think it's good that we do something in the schools, but I think we need to take the weight and place it where it belongs.
Yeah, my second quick question goes to Leonida. And first, I wanted to congratulate her and to tell her that I'm really impressed by what the organization she is in is doing. And I would like just to emphasize that, in fact, her trajectory, where she comes from, she hasn't explained that, but I'm sure if she can summarize that in 2 minutes, I think it would be very interesting to, in fact, be a little more optimistic and see that in her case, I don't know, she is now at the head of an organization that struggles for the indigenous movement and for the indigenous right, and that brings us a lot of hope, because she's a person who hasn't had the greatest education in the world, but she's now bringing a lot of advance, and I think that if she managed to do that, it's really awesome, and it brings a lot of hope, because it means that all the people in the developing countries who are now not benefiting from the development can also, it's a hope that they can also do something to make us change, in the government of our countries. And I have a question for her, in fact. I would like to know, what role do you think you have as an indigenous woman in the movement, and how special your role is because you are a woman, and how accepted you are in your positions for what you do, because I guess it's not always easy.
Bueno, primeramente muchas gracias. Mi papá, mi mamá migró de las altiplanas a esa zona. Yo he nacido en la zona del Chapare, conocido más que todo Chapare. Entonces, solamente yo estudié hasta primero medio, no salí bachiller. Entonces, como yo no conocí a mi padre, mi papá se murió cuando yo tenía 2 años. Entonces, cuando mi mamá erradicó la coca, se emocionó por la alternativa, entonces cortó la coca. Pues cuando cortó la coca, las alternativas no nos dieron dinero y por eso fracasé el estudio.
She was born in the Chapare region. That's where all the plantations for the coca leaf are. But her family came from the other side of Bolivia, from the Altiplano. and they migrated to Chapare, but her father died when she was 2 years old. In the Chapare region, her mother was a coca grower, and she actually fell for the alternative development crops. And when they failed, Leonida had to leave school. So she only reached something like 7th grade. She never finished high school.
Entonces yo crecí en esa zona. He sabido que en esa zona son migrantes de toda Bolivia los que no saben leer ni escribir. Entonces yo tenía que compartir con lo que sabía leer y escribir. Nos organizamos las mujeres. Hay veces, gracias a esta injusticia que lo vivimos, la injusticia es para nosotros y la justicia para los ricos. Porque una iniciativa también Evo nos ayudó a organizarnos las mujeres en la regional, porque había sido muy importante la unidad de ahora nuestra lucha es las mujeres, los hombres y nuestros niños, nuestros jóvenes que se están organizando como Carolina para defender un derecho que nos pertenece a los pobres.
She's talking about the fact that not many people in her region actually know how to read and write. So the few women that knew how to do it got together and formed an organization. They've been supported all the time by Evo Morales, who's actually pushed the participation of women and even children in the struggle. She says that people and children like Carolina are actually have an important role also in her organization.
Por eso, aunque nosotros como pobres no tenemos acceso a la universidad, en la universidad rechazan a los jóvenes que salen bachilleres en nuestra zona y por eso también se organizaron nuestros bachilleres. Solamente la universidad recibe que tenga un apellido extranjero y no Mamani, tampoco Quispe, no aceptan. Y por eso decimos nuestros hijos también deben educarse, como hablaba nuestro profesor que está aquí dando orientación, explicación, que nuestros hijos mismos en las universidades, en algunos donde están los ricos, ahí va, si la mamá lleva a la pollera, dice el hijo, no, tú me haces quedar mal, así en palabras más exactas. O sea que a su mamá no dice mamá, no, o sea, la discriminación es desde los ricos que vienen, porque tiene que ser bien vestida para ser como madre de un hijo que está en la universidad. Pero esa es la discriminación que a mí me ha llegado hasta el fondo. Por eso estamos organizados, las mujeres, para podernos concientizarnos, orientarnos, porque las leyes vienen contra los pobres y favor a los ricos, para que los ricos sean más ricos y los pobres seamos pongos, esclavos ante este modelo, porque nosotros nos vivimos como ya esclavitud. Y eso, el arca nos está llevando que los ricos sean más ricos y los pobres de pongos, de esclavos. Y por eso yo me he metido, porque yo vivo en esa zona, y por eso para nosotros, que yo llevo como el rol de papel, que las mujeres tengan el mismo derecho como hombres a decidir, a hacer, y también como mujer a nivel nacional que estamos organizados. Y hay veces decimos, las mujeres no tenemos el derecho a rendirnos en las luchas que vienen por delante. Por eso estamos organizados. Además también tenemos ya mujeres en lo político. Tenemos mujeres congresistas. La ex ejecutiva de las Bartolinas, Isabel Ortega, está con su ropa cultura en el Parlamento. Aunque antes no teníamos acceso al Parlamento, pero sí. Ahora tenemos mujeres en el Parlamento que nos representan la voz del campesino en el Parlamento.
And she says that not many indigenous young people have access to university. They discriminate them on their last name. If they have an indigenous last name like Quispe or Mamani, they're not accepted. Even if they are, afterwards the young people, the students, feel ashamed of their mothers when they are dressed in traditional clothes. And they are very hurt by this. She also talked about the fact that the struggle is a struggle for the poor, while all the laws, all the free trade agreements are actually made for the rich to enrich them on account of the poor. She also said that now she's fighting as a woman for the respect of the woman and for them to have the right to decide and to do in the same level as men. Right now, they have even Congress women from the organization. They've reached Congress and they go to Congress dressed with their traditional clothes. So this is a great achievement for them.
First of all, I hope you'll join me in thanking the panel for their wonderful, wonderful comments and contributions tonight. We heard a great deal about sharing both what we have in our minds and with each other. And I hope that we would take away from tonight what kind of world we would envision and think about that, and how we can change and connect to what we've seen and heard tonight, and what really reflect on what our participation is in the world. Finally, we have a surprise for you. Lev Grossman-Spivak is a junior at Boston University who has worked with the Boston Area Youth Organizing Project, BYOP, in the Prosder Hebrew School chapter in Newton, Massachusetts. And he's going to perform for us tonight.
I'd just like to thank everyone for inviting me here. I'm overwhelmed with society's rhyme. It's coming out of my ears, my eyes, my nose, but out of my mouth is where the lyrics flow. I'm overwhelmed with society's rhyme. It's coming out of my ears, my eyes, my nose, but out of my mouth is where the lyrics flow. Everyone's always taught to be something, Christian, Jewish, or Muslim, divided from the start of the system. This rendition, my life, strangely similar to Pulp Fiction, no more like Wag the Dog. We be like dogs, and more like sheep in a herd, packed into dorm rooms, learning patriotic tunes, taught the middle-class scenario with static verbs, while real life is being played out on any old curb. And all we read is what they put in the newspaper blurb. But I recently discovered my own mind was superb. Yes, I stormed it in the process of cleaning it. Recently read to it, paid attention in bed to it. Dreams teaching me what's going on in my head. Kicking out parasitic ideology society has fed to me. I reach past the headlines to attack the frontier. Intellectual acceleration is stronger than steel. I don't reel back the line when the fish tug hard. On president's orders, I won't give him an affirmative nod. My mind's like spring after winter, earth slowly coming out of thaw. I reincarnate the 90% of your brain operating on hibernate. Sorry, I made a mistake. My interest rates are through the roof, so I must sell out of this mind control existence of absolute proof. Middle class mastermind existence is currently in business. I'm just telling her how it is, like a journalistic witness, overwhelmed with society's rhyme. It's coming out of my ears, my eyes, my nose, but out of my mouth is where the lyrics flow. I'm overwhelmed with society's rhyme. It's coming out of my ears, my eyes, my nose, but out of my mouth is where the lyrics flow. I play my vocal cords like a Ouija board, a sword slashing through metaphors, a knight in shining armor, a stealth bomber, dropping heat from 50,000 feet. Explosive, dangerous, what, can you compete? I poke fun at you as if you were a figurine. What made you think that you could beam? Knowledge more sophisticated than my simple stream of capital T truth, the sleuth of the mic. Detecting fake knowledge dropping prophetizers. I'll disassemble your lyrical gadgets like the inspector. I paint pictures with my message, organizing MCs for a clinical session. Lyrically addressing issues affecting political elections, democracy, the infection instead of the medicine. Politicians withholding the penicillin. I said my reason for speaking is to offset the restricted beacon of light. The Constitution is written right, but are we reading it right? I seem to remember something like equality, liberty, fraternity. Happily, we should be living free, but are we really? My witchcraft predicts the apocalypse if we don't get with the program. Start teaching class to Uncle Sam. Resurrect the true rendition of history, because our society has been miswriting our story since before the turn of the century. Sociology must take precedence. Only path to some sort of common sense. Speaking of common sense, what a bunch of nonsense, raising the rent, no control, and you wonder why kids chilling out, taking hits from a bowl, death toll rising overseas, flags waving in honor of liberty. But what is liberty when you don't feel free to voice your opinion, forced to stay silent, take orders, just listen, nod your head, walk the earth walk the earth like a zombie. Or instead, I got a better idea to insert in your head. Here it goes, yes, resist with a twist of lemon. Sour their plans for an exclusive heaven. Stick your ideas in the oven and make your bread leaven. Grab your pen or your crayon, markers, spray cans, break dance, drop beats, innovate, don't reheat, speak your mind, educated, more creative than bushwhacking presidents whose ears are too clogged to listen. Deaf to the new rendition, colorful like tie-dye, start to learn to drop truth so you can differentiate from the lie. I'm overwhelmed with society's rhyme. It's coming out of my ears, my eyes, my nose, but out of my mouth is where the lyrics flow. I'm overwhelmed with society's rhyme. It's coming out of my ears, my eyes, my nose, but out of my mouth is where the lyrics flow. I look at this democracy, stripped down to the core. All I see is hypocrisy, the images they broadcast on your TV. But are they listening to me? Are they listening to we? I speak free of the labels because I'm willing and able to put a candle to the message that they're preaching. I'm reaching from back in the past to a future with the rooster wake you up from your slumber. Dial in a new number, the truth clapping like thunder. Makes me wonder what I've been thinking all these years. Through the tears, I see the fear in the pig's eye. He's just a foolish spy. My knowledge he can't deny. He's living a lie. Soon it'll all break down. He'll start to cry. Yo, our time is now. Speak loud and proud. Instill a dictionary definition of my prediction of our condition in the middle of this political situation. Relating a futuristic style. Evolutionizing. Rising like the ideas out of a microphone. The scythe of life rolled up, smoked for the delight. I smite the oppressors because it's my right. I be concise, short-winded when I write. Yo, lyrically, I bring the synergy, interaction of discrete agencies effectively, bringing the sum of the parts together, not as strong individually, spiritually. My rhymes dip into times when I'm connected to the divine, a place where I can find a way to resist the system. I insist the wisdom inherent in this allows me to risk clearing away the mist in front of your eyes, make you realize the size of the truth that I surmise. Overwhelmed with society's rhyme, it's coming out of my ears, my eyes, my nose, but out of my mouth is where the lyrics flow. I'm overwhelmed with society's rhyme, it's coming out of my ears, my eyes, my nose, but out of my mouth is where the lyrics flow. I speak through the justice of the unprotected, disrespected. Oppression comes in many forms, moves slowly like a worm through the fertile soil, living off the raw materials of others, not your brothers, but slave masters trying to take what they'll never have, always looking for a bigger piece of the slab. I don't respect the whipped cream on top of the sundae. The ice cream is where you find the riches. Why are beautiful minds being treated like bitches, disrespected, abused, told what to do, instead of opening the eyes of the man in the big bed? Open up his head, inject him with a shot of common sense, along with his high-class cocaine in Mercedes-Benz. Yo, tens upon tens, thousands upon thousands, millions upon millions, controlled by the 1% of a billion. In fact, less than that, sitting atop the political mountain, distracting the people from enacting what they really want to happen. Gotta reinvent the people into tough acting to knacking. Blanket over my eyes for so long, I finally learned to hear the song, and now I'm singing it, I'm bringing it, the message in a bottle, turned up to full throttle. The truth will explode like an Apollo 13 model. I'm writing a new title, absent of the labels that prevented Jacob and Esau from being brothers in the Bible. I'm liable to educate the ruling class, not the workers, cause they in the know, immersed in the shit. We gotta dip Big Brother in a little of it, tell him what it's like, make him listen, lock him into some eye contact so he can't dismiss what you spitting, can't abort what you reporting, strap him down in a chair so he has to listen, has to reverse the flow of this clinically insane society, diagnosing mental illness like it was penny candy, popping Prozac to NAMC arms to fall on his back. How you figure that? Only medicine for me is a strong and healthy community, only chance to be free. My mind's got the vision in the third eye. I'm not blind. Piece by piece, we'll find a way to spread this precious rhyme. I said piece by piece, we'll find a way to spread this precious rhyme. I'm overwhelmed with society's rhyme. It's coming out of my ears, my eyes, my nose, but out of my mouth is where the lyrics flow. I'm overwhelmed with society's rhyme. It's coming out of my ears, my eyes, my nose, but out of my mouth is where the lyrics flow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Love, for that wonderful performance. Last word, Tuesday, March 4th, 6 to 7 p.m., Conroy Commons, the basement of this building, to continue the conversation. It's La CIA meeting, the Latin American and Caribbean Educators Association, considering how to continue the conversation where different worlds are possible. Thank you for coming tonight.